Once upon a time, beneath the school named Royal Foundation, the school was simple. The staff room was where teachers swipe work and wisdom, where laughter and sign met in the same breath. Into that room walked a woman who did not like to share breath with others. She was called Madam Ijoma, but she liked her name served with ceremony. She walked as if the floor would remember the impression of her shoe, as if the chairs should bow at the tips of her heel. When other teachers entered the staff room, they would lower their voice and let her speak. Not from fear, from habit. She had made that an habit. Madam Ijoma did not sit with other teachers. She carried a small bag of certificates, each carefully folded. She kept her bag in the corner of the staff room, on a little chair, and would touch it in passing, as one touches a medal. When the midday bell rang and the teachers gathered round their own cups, she stood by the window, hands folded, watching as if the world outside was stage and she had come from very far indeed. When Mrs. Ada offered the snacks, Madam Ijoma would smile in a way that meant, I dine on other things. When Mr. Tunde laughed at a lesson idea and said, we used to teach that with pedals, Madam Ijoma would reply, I learnt it in a place where pedals had names. She refuses closeness the way a real bird refuses a cage. She claimed she was different. She claimed she was first of something, the first to be educated, she would say. Letting the word go like small flag, she proclaimed daily that other teachers did not sit in the same school of knowledge as she did, and because she said it often, the hair around her began to accept the claim as though reputation were proof. Other teachers felt the cold of her separation. They had warmth in other things, the small jokes in the corridor, a sheer worry for a child who did not come to school. Madam Ijoma had none of this warmth, only a careful distance and a voice trained to be heard. She would not join the ordinary lesson of tea and gossip. She treated the staff room as a theatre lobby, where she turned herself before the big hats. The children found her in the class like sun find a new roof. Madam Ijoma praised only the quick answers. She loved the sound of children copying her words back perfectly. That neatness calmed her. It proved, she thought, that she was the first to have taught something properly, as if learning itself must bow to her routine. But there was a girl who watched carefully. Her name was Sima. Sima had a small whistle she kept in her pocket and a laugh that could stop the most stubborn argument. Sima loved the way a teacher could stop a room from talking and still keep it alive. She watched how Madam Ijoma held herself. She watched how Madam Ijoma walked past Mrs. Ada's desk without a greeting and keep her face turned like a predator. Sima knew that teaching was not a crown you wore alone. Teaching to her was gathering of hands and voices. The way Madam Ijoma refused to join the cycle sharpened something inside Sima. The tutor's bursting did not stop at posture. She told stories, not of her childhood, but of distant places. Lecture halls with marble floors, professions with corrected ministers, scholarships she said she had refused. In the hallway, she spoke of books that bent her will, of the time she taught a river to change course, and the time a thunder listener changed its mind. Madam Ijoma lied too much. She claimed she's the first in everything. She spoke as if the knowledge has sprouted out of her standard. At first, the student listened like respectful audience, but talk need roots. Where Madam Ijoma, roots should have sucked into the soil of the care for the children. They remained wrapped in paper white and stamped. She used the language of the city to set herself apart. She even called her colleague my junior. And the phrase landed like a small stone at everyone's feet. The staff room retracted a little. Children grew unsure of making mistakes in her classes. And there, in the quiet, a storm of different kind was gathering. None of thunder, but of small plan. Sima and her friends watched. They had seen how tutors boasting many things heavy. The children whispered among themselves. They made a plan that was not meant for malice, but for truth. to teach Madam Ijoma in a way she could not deny what real teaching and learning looked like. Before the plan could be executed, news that a city inspector would visit the school in 2 weeks, Mr. Bassi, a serious man with a notebook that hardly even smiled, would examine classes, hand out scholarship to a child, and present the Teacher of the Year award. The whole town hummed. The inspector visit was mirror that could show any small town bright. Madam Ijoma, eyes lit up with ambition the size of a drum. I will win, she said to herself. She declared in the assembly. My pupils will also win. The town will see what happened when the first of first teaches. She tightened her papers and practiced the line of a speech. The inspector visit became the peak the tutors would climb, and she pressed the children into drill that made their voices glass sweet but thin with overwork. She matched them in repetition, polished their reciter until every word clicked like a coin. Sima watched the children go from curious to hollow shell of memory. She spoke to Aisha, Laidi, and Kofi, and others. We will not try to make her look foolish, she said. We will make her see. We will speak slowly, tell her what she would not hear if she expects only to be first. 2 mornings before the inspector's arrival, Madam Ijoma called a special rehearsal. She stood at the edge of the big hall, turned her face into the kind of statue a painter might admire, and spoke loudly. When the inspector comes, she said, he would see the order I bring to learning. He will see that I can even make the shyest child speak like a page reading itself. She arranged tests and promised prizes. I will bring honor to the school. She told the staff room, not as request but as prophecy. She would not let anyone share the center with her. In the staff room whispers, Mrs. Ada folded her hands and said, she walked like a queen that forgets its people. Mr. Tunde simply shook his head and shushed his worried smile with a cup of tea. The inspector arrived upon a morning that smelled of hot bread in the market and the river slow breads. The road towards the school was lined with people wearing their best. The principal had polished the bell with care. The children stood like a tide ready to be shown. Madam Ijoma walked out as if she was the prize itself. Her dress shrunk with precise movement of someone who had been taught posture and practiced it until it looked like part of her bones. The display began. Recital, arithmetic performance like dance, song sharpened to a point. The inspector nodded, and the assembly adults clapped. Everything shone, the way vanished in shine, bright, but not always warm. For a while, the school felt pride and relief. When it was turn for Madam Ijoma to give her speech, Madam Ijoma opened her mouth to give the show-stopping speech she had practiced for fortnights, and nothing came out from her mouth. Her lips formed the shape of word, her throat worked, but the sound was not there. The red pen she always clicked against her teeth moved but made no noise. Madam Ijoma fell into shame. The inspector pen paused. The teachers held their breath as if it was an object. The children looked at Madam Ijoma with a mix of shame and surprise. She stood eyes open and tried to speak again. Her mouth shaping things, but no sound came out. Madam Ijoma watched with shame. The same person who had practiced so much for this day could not even say anything. Same person who had boasted about knowing everything could not even give a speech. The certificate in her bag laid flat and mute. Sima and her friends had nothing to cast about Madam Ijoma again. The word had been said. Madam Ijoma's face looked confused, and something else, the rawness of being found without the language she had built on. She looked at Sima and a group of children who gathered around her like small highland. Madam Ijoma walked out of the hall with shame. Madam Ijoma refuses to go to school the following day due to the incident that has happened. 2 days later, Madam Ijoma went to school. Madam Ijoma, who refuses to sit with her colleagues, now sits with them. She even helps some students in tying their shoelace. Mr. Tunde watched her new change. He watched how she laughed genuinely at jokes that Mrs. Ada told. a love that came from a place that had been softened. Madam Ijoma did not immediately become a new woman of endless kindness. Change in a person is a slow river. Yet, the seed were planted. The tutor who once refused to break bread in the staff room now accepts gifts from people. She walked into the staff room with less posture and more curiosity. She began in little ways. She apologized to her colleagues. She came to see that being first is a lonely title. But being part of a cycle brings you the warmth and mistakes that make you wise. This is the end of the story. The moral of the story is simple. Pride and arrogance always come before a fall. No matter how much you look down on others, the truth will always surface. Humility, respect and honesty are far more valuable than pretending to be what you are not. Thank you for watching once again. Please like this story, comment your thoughts about the story, and most importantly, please do not forget to subscribe. See you in my next one. Bye.